Have you ever been on a street corner and noticed what your surroundings look like, then wonder what it would look like 20 years in the future? If so, then you're in the right place. My business isn't exactly legal, but it's also not illegal. Before I tell you anything further about what will happen, I'll need you to sign a waiver of confidentiality. It's nothing personal, really, but I can't risk any mention of this technology getting out into the public. Thank you. I am the inventor of a, time machine is too broad of a description, but it will have to do for now. I can take you to anywhere in the past, present, or future for a small fee, of course. Anything you do while in the location is completely devoid of ramifications due to the butterfly effect. Are you familiar with that? Good. Now, the cost to you is divided into two payments. I will require 50% up front, $250, and when we arrive back here, it will cost you another $250. Technically, the full amount of $500 is for a round trip, $250 each way. I will not, however, accept a payment in full before we leave, as if something happens and I am unable to bring you back, I don't want you to pay more than you needed to. I have a quick question. Sure, go ahead. What do you mean by, if you are unable to bring me back? Well, I suppose I have to tell you, since you asked. My former colleague at MIT and I were the brains behind this invention, but my colleague was different. He constantly argued with me that we needed to release this to the public right away, and I argued that if it fell into the wrong hands, the effects would be devastating. We eventually reached the consensus that we would hold private, confidential testing sessions with whomever signed up, and I thought that was the end of the discussion. The device was in its beta testing phase, and we were bringing in coworkers and friends to experience it. Things were going well, and just as the device was nearly complete, my coworker began not showing up at work. At first it was just a few days at a time, and so I thought he may have taken ill, but when he vanished for weeks at a time, I began to grow suspicious. After work one day, I was walking along a street when I noticed a dollar bill on the ground. I bent to pick it up, and when I stood straight up again, I noticed an odd-looking storefront. The door opened, and I narrowed my eyes as I recognized my colleague leaving the door and locking it behind him. I walked up and tapped him on the shoulder, and when he turned to face me, he went white. I asked him what he was doing, and after stammering for a minute or so, he finally spilled it. He had taken the backup device and had installed it in this shop and was offering tours to people for profit. I knew he had been up to something wrong, and I actually didn't care what he did. He persuaded me to sit down for a coffee with him, and he told me of his business plan. I was concerned, despite being told of a non-disclosure and confidentiality agreement that the clients would have to sign. He assured me that nothing bad would come of it, and that's when I stood and left him sitting with his mouth open. I was in the facility, tinkering with something in the device, and I was startled when I heard the door fling open near the back. I looked up from my work to see my colleague running towards me, a look of panic on his face. He skidded to a stop in front of me and began frantically babbling nonsense. I told him to slow down and tell me what happened, and when he eventually caught his breath, he told me what happened. He had taken a group of people to the future, and when they were ready to head back, something went wrong. The machine malfunctioned and sent only my colleague back, trapping the group in the year 2206. After he told me this, he broke down sobbing, and when I tried to engage him, he turned and fled. I haven't seen him since. So, are you still up for this, Joey? Yeah. I sighed, and then said okay. We went through a back door into a small room where the machine was all set up and ready to go. We sat in the chairs, and I typed in the coordinates of where we were going, and then told Joey to hold on. We spent the whole time sightseeing and reminiscing. Joey was intent on making one last stop before we headed back, and I reluctantly agreed. We arrived outside of an apartment building and stood there at the doors, silent. I looked at Joey quizzically, and to that, he produced a keyring and unlocked the doors, and before I could protest that this was outside of the rules, he was already inside, and so I had no choice but to follow, keeping a close eye on him. We left the building and the sun was setting, and then Joey turned to me, tears brimming in his eyes as he told me that the person we met inside was his wife, who had died just last year. I gave him a comforting pat on his shoulder before telling him that we needed to go back, and Joey nodded, but had a scheming glint in his eyes. As I pushed the button that would send us back, Joey took 2 deliberate steps away from the zone. I tried to grab him and pull him back in, as I knew what he was up to, but I had already pushed the button, and the 3-second delay was too short to be able to grab Joey and bring him back to the present. I often wonder whether I had made the right choice to leave Joey behind, and I think that I did. At least he was left behind for a good cause, and if it kept him happy, then that's all that mattered, I guess. I've closed down my shop and disconnected the machine, having moved it to storage at the facility, hopefully hidden away well enough that no one will ever find it. Some days, I think back on my colleague and wonder where he went, but I'll never really know now, will I?